Nostalgia seems to always take the internet by storm. Combine that with the younger generation's enthusiasm for identifying and labeling aesthetics, and suddenly, there's a name for every era of visual themes. Here are 3 aesthetics that have piqued the collective interest of people in the past years. Some quick little side notes before I begin. This was inspired by this post on Reddit. I chose to exclude flat design because I wouldn't necessarily consider it as nostalgic. Lastly, aesthetics are loosely defined nowadays and encompasses a lot of things, but this will focus on their visual aspects. The beginning of Memphis design can be attributed to the Memphis group, also called Memphis Milano from Italy, taking its name from a Bob Dylan song playing in the background of their meeting one evening in 1980. The design movement was a response to the prevailing modernism and minimalism at the time, going against the less is more and form follows function mentalities. While modern designs were rigid, structured, plain, and practical, Memphis embraced the kitsch, bizarre, eclectic, and impractical. Visually, the group took inspiration from Art Deco, pop art, and the kitschy designs of the 50s. The result was the defining motifs of Memphis: bright electric colors, geometric shapes, squiggles, and patterns. The group focused on furniture and interior design, where on top of the classic Memphis motifs, involved experimentation on materials and rejection of ergonomics. The design movement, while initially met with backlash, made waves and was retrospectively considered the defining style of the 80s. The principles of Memphis design eventually influenced other fields: product design, fashion, media, and graphic design, but still retained its visual identity. While the group disbanded in 1987, they weren't optimistic about the longevity of the design movement. The aesthetic was rebellious and over the top, and somewhere over the line, Memphis slowly stopped resonating with the masses by the 90s. The following decades saw a resurgence in its popularity in the mainstream: fashion collections, graphics, and interior design. Over time, Memphis has developed some offshoot and related aesthetics: the kid-centric Memphis Jr. and the more contemporary, flatly designed corporate Memphis. Y2K began to take flight by the 90s, taking its name from the year 2000 computer problem. Though nowadays, it is recognized as the successor to Memphis, they're fundamentally different in a lot of ways. While Memphis was recognized as a design movement, Y2K was more of an umbrella catch-all term for anything signaling the specific spirit of that era. As a matter of fact, the Y2K aesthetic was only retrospectively named as such, in response to the collective enthusiasm it has received years after it fell out with the masses. It's harder to point out where or who exactly originated Y2K, though the visual inspirations it derived from points to the 60s space age and 70s ultramodernism. The recurring themes and principles were very apparent, the biggest of which is futurism. The new century is imminent, which, from people of that time, signals the big future. Y2K reflects how the future was perceived to be at that time. Optimism and techno-utopianism were also mentioned as recurring themes. People were optimistic and imaginative for a utopian future aided by technology. This is well represented in the visual motifs of the era: metallic, chrome materials, gradients, blobby irregular shapes, and technological flares. This carried out to design, architecture, interiors, and the media. In graphic design, fonts were sleek and decorative, conveying the high-tech, while graphics contained cyborg depictions. The technology of the time ranged from blobby forms to highly colorful, and emphasis on making gadgets clear or translucent. PVC, leather, glossy, and metallic textiles and makeup were key elements in the fashion. Y2K began to fall out by the early 2000s, slowly being replaced by what is now called the McBling aesthetic: maximalist, luxurious, and bedazzled. When it comes to the resurgence, most of the time, McBling and Y2K are categorized together mistakenly. The most recent nostalgic aesthetic that has been getting online recognition is Frutiger Aero. Like Y2K, the era was also only retrospectively named, after the Frutiger typeface and Windows Aero. However, unlike the other two aesthetics, this one is narrowly defined. Frutiger Aero has a hint of futurism, but in a different way than Y2K expressed, almost like a watered-down, clean version that involved the natural world. This is evident in the motifs of Frutiger Aero: photographs and macro shots of skies, water, bubbles, leaves, grass, and landscapes, and colors evocative of them: blue and green. glossy finishes, and glass materials. Part of the reason for these choices were in hopes of tech companies making their products more accessible, in contrast to Y2K's theme of showcasing the intricacy of the hardware as much as possible. The aesthetic was mostly prevalent in design language, media, technology, and interiors. In UI design, the term skeuomorphism, which is basically the practice of designing something to be a close depiction to how it looks in the real world, has been mentioned as a key factor. In technology, companies favored compact and simpler designs in line with accessibility. A certain style of interior has also been considered Frutiger Era, glossy finishes, and a light futuristic atmosphere. Several sub-aesthetics were distinguished from Frutiger Era: the more flatly designed Frutiger Metro, and the four colors design in technology. The glossy design of Frutiger Era was slowly replaced by the now widely used 2D minimalist flat design by the early 2010s. Recent renewed interest has spawned online communities of enthusiasts for the aesthetic. For whatever the reasons are, aesthetics falling in and out of the times isn't a new thing. It's even seen in how the three mentioned originated. Elements are taken from previous ones to create a theme that communicates something totally different. Maybe it's the visual language of a specific aesthetic resonating with different groups of people. Or it's simply the nostalgia, the people just wanting to relive the memories associated with that era. It will be interesting to see if this era of flat design and minimalism will receive the same treatment when it too becomes replaced.